The throne room of the empire stretched endlessly into darkness. Massive pillars of black crystal rose toward a ceiling no one could see. Thousands of nobles stood in perfect rows, their silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. At the far end of the room, Emperor sat on a throne made of compressed starlight. His eyes were cold and empty, like two dead moons. Princess walked forward through the crowd. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. She was small compared to the other and younger than anyone else in the room. Her violet eyes burned with a fire that made the nobles uncomfortable. They whispered to each other as she passed. They all knew why she was here. The emperor had made a new decree that morning. A small planet in a distant galaxy had been discovered. The creatures living there were weak and primitive. They had not yet learned to travel between stars. The emperor decided these creatures would become slaves. They would work in the mines of the empire until they died. This was the way. The strong ruled. The weak served. But could not accept this. She stopped at the base of the throne and looked up at her father. The emperor stared down at her with no expression on his face. He had 5 daughters and was the youngest. She was also the only one who ever questioned him. Father said, her voice was clear and steady, I ask you to cancel the decree. The whispers in the crowd grew louder. No one spoke against the emperor. No one dared. Emperor leaned forward slightly. You ask me to cancel the decree, he repeated slowly. His voice was deep and cold. Tell me, daughter, why would I do such a thing? Took a breath. Because it is wrong. These creatures have done nothing to us. They do not even know we exist. To enslave them simply because we can is cruel and unjust. A noble near the front laughed out loud. Others joined him. The sound filled the throne room like poison. But did not look away from her father. The strong should protect the weak, she continued, not destroy them. Mother believed this. She taught me this before she died. The laughter stopped immediately. The mention of the late empress was forbidden. Everyone knew this, had broken the rule on purpose. Emperor's eyes narrowed. For a moment something flickered across his face. It might have been pain, it might have been anger. Then it was gone and his expression became stone once more. Your mother, he said quietly, was weak. Her weakness killed her. I will not allow that weakness to infect my empire. Felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She was not weak, she was kind. There is a difference. There is no difference. The emperor stood from his throne. He was tall and terrifying, a giant made of shadow and silver light. Kindness is weakness. Mercy is weakness. Compassion is weakness. These things have no place in the heart of a ruler. He walked down the steps toward. The crowd moved back, creating a circle around father and daughter. No one wanted to be too close to the emperor's anger. I have tolerated your foolishness for too long, Emperor said. He stopped in front of and looked down at her. I believed you would outgrow these ideas. I believed you would learn, but you have only grown more stubborn. Lifted her chin. I will not apologize for having a conscience. A conscience, the emperor laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. You speak to me of conscience while standing in the heart of the greatest empire in the galaxy. Everything you have, everything you are, exists because our ancestors conquered the weak. Your comfortable life is built on the bones of 1,000 enslaved species. Then perhaps it is time for change, said. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The nobles gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others looked away, afraid to witness what would happen next. Emperor was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet and terrible. You want change? Very well, I will give you change. He raised his hand and made a gesture. 2 soldiers stepped forward from the shadows. They wore black armor and carried weapons that glowed with deadly energy. Daughter of, I hereby strip you of your royal title, the emperor announced. His voice echoed through the throne room. You are no longer a princess of the empire. You are no longer my daughter. You are nothing. His heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her face calm. She had expected punishment. She had prepared for it. But she was not prepared for what came next. "You will be taken to a death world," the Emperor continued. "A planet so hostile that no can survive there. You will be left there alone with nothing. If your precious conscience can keep you alive, then perhaps you will prove me wrong." He leaned close to her face. "But we both know what will happen. You will die alone, cold and forgotten, on a world that does not even know your name, and the Empire will continue without you as it always has." The soldiers grabbed arms. She did not struggle. There was no point. She looked at her father one last time, searching for any sign of love or regret. She found nothing. "Goodbye, father," she said softly. The Emperor turned his back to her. "I have no daughter named." They dragged her away through the silent crowd. The nobles watched with empty eyes. None of them spoke. None of them tried to help. They were too afraid or too loyal or simply too cruel to care. Was taken to a small ship and thrown inside. The soldiers did not speak to her. They did not look at her. She was already dead to them. The ship flew for many hours, watched through a small window as stars blurred past. She did not know where they were taking her. She did not ask. Finally, the ship slowed and entered the atmosphere of a blue and green planet. Had never seen a world with so much water. It looked beautiful and strange. The ship landed in a forest covered with white snow. The soldiers opened the door and pushed outside. She fell into the cold powder and gasped. The air was different here, heavy and thick, hard to breathe. "This is Earth," one of the soldiers said. "Enjoy your new home, traitor." They laughed as they returned to the ship. The door closed and the ship rose into the sky. Within moments it was gone, leaving only silence and falling snow. Lay in the snow, shivering. Her thin royal clothes offered no protection from the cold. Her skin, designed for temperature-controlled palaces, burned with pain. She tried to use her light powers to create warmth, but they flickered weakly. The atmosphere was wrong. Everything was wrong. She was alone on a strange planet, abandoned by her own blood. Above her, unfamiliar stars began to appear in the darkening sky. She did not recognize any of them. Closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to her dead mother. Then she forced herself to stand. She would not die lying in the snow. If she was going to die, she would die fighting. She stumbled into the dark forest, not knowing where she was going, not knowing if she would survive the night. Behind her, her footprints slowly disappeared under the falling snow, as if she had never existed at all. 3 weeks had passed since fell from the sky. 3 weeks of hunger, cold, and fear. 3 weeks of learning that survival was harder than anything she had ever known. In the palace, everything had been given to her. Food appeared on golden plates. Servants brought warm clothes. Temperature was controlled by machines. She had never needed to think about basic needs. They were simply there, like air or gravity. But here on Earth, nothing was given. Everything had to be taken. Had found a small cave on the 3rd day. It was dark and damp, but it blocked the wind and snow. She made it her home. She gathered dead leaves and grass to make a bed. She used her light powers to create small flames for warmth, though each use left her weaker than before. The first week was the worst. She had no idea what was safe to eat. She tried berries from a bush and became violently sick for 2 days. She drank water from a stream and felt slightly better. She caught a small animal with her bare hands and tried to eat the meat raw. Her body rejected it completely. Biology was different from Earth biology. Her stomach could not process most things she found. The proteins were wrong. The chemicals were strange. She was starving on a planet covered with food. By the 2nd week, she discovered that certain roots and insects did not make her sick. They tasted terrible, but they kept her alive. She learned to dig under the snow for frozen plants. She learned which insects lived under tree bark. It was disgusting work, but she did not complain. There was no one to complain to. Her body slowly began to change. She lost weight until her bones showed through her silver skin. Her glow faded until she looked like gray metal. Her violet eyes grew dull with exhaustion, but her lungs adapted to the heavy air. Her muscles adjusted to the stronger gravity. Her heart learned to beat in this new rhythm. She was dying, but she was also surviving. She did not know which process would win. At night, often looked at the stars. None of them were familiar. She was so far from home that the light of her own sun had not yet reached this place. In the Empire, she was probably already forgotten, just another traitor who had been erased from history. She wondered if her sisters thought about her. She doubted it. They had always been jealous of her closeness with their mother. After the Empress died, they had treated like a stranger. When she was banished, they probably felt relief. She did not blame them. The Empire raised its children to be cold and hard. Love was seen as weakness. Trust was dangerous. The only safe relationship was one of power and control. But's mother had been different. Empress Sora had secretly taught her youngest daughter about kindness and compassion. She had told stories about ancient who believed in peace and cooperation. She had said these values were not weaknesses, but strengths that the Empire had forgotten. When Sora died from a mysterious illness, was only 12 years old. She believed her mother had been killed, though she could never prove it. Perhaps the Emperor had ordered it. Perhaps the nobles had decided the Empress was too dangerous. Either way, had been alone ever since. Now she was alone again, in a more complete way than ever before. During the third week, found a damaged device in her pocket. It was a small recording machine, meant for taking notes. It had survived the journey to Earth, though its power was nearly gone. She began recording messages to her mother. She knew Sora was dead. She knew these messages would never be heard, but speaking them made her feel less alone. "Mother, I am sorry," she whispered into the device one night. Snow was falling outside her cave. The wind howled like a dying animal. "I tried to change things. I tried to make Father understand, but I failed. I was not strong enough." She paused, coughing. Her lungs still struggled with the air sometimes. "I do not know how much longer I can survive. My body is failing. I have almost no power left. The cold gets worse every day. I think winter is coming deeper." She looked at the small fire flickering in front of her. It was barely enough to keep her hands warm. "But I do not regret what I said. I do not regret standing up for those people. If I die here, at least I will die knowing I tried to do something good." The device beeped, warning that power was low, turned it off and held it close to her chest. It was the only thing she had from her old life. Sometimes through the trees saw lights in the distance. They flickered yellow and orange, warm and inviting. She knew they came from human settlements. This planet was inhabited by an intelligent species, though the Empire considered them primitive. Part of her wanted to go toward those lights. She was so lonely, so tired of being alone. Maybe the humans would help her. Maybe they would show her kindness. But another part of her was afraid. The Empire had taught her that primitive species were dangerous and unpredictable. Humans were supposed to be violent, tribal creatures who feared anything different. If they saw her silver skin and glowing eyes, they might attack her. They might kill her out of fear. She could not take that risk. She was too weak to defend herself. One attack would finish her. So she stayed in the forest, watching the distant lights like stars she could never reach. The cold grew worse as the weeks passed. Slight powers faded until she could barely create a spark. She spent most of her time sleeping, trying to conserve energy. Her dreams were filled with memories of warmth and food and her mother's gentle voice. One morning she woke up and could not feel her feet. She looked down and saw that her silver skin had turned dark gray. Frostbite. The cold was killing her from the outside in. She tried to stand but collapsed immediately. Her body had nothing left to give. She had been fighting for 3 weeks, but the fight was nearly over. Crawled out of the cave and into the snow. She did not know why. Maybe she wanted to see the sky one last time. Maybe she just wanted to feel the sun on her face. She reached a small stream and fell beside it. The water was frozen at the edges but still flowing in the middle. She dipped her hand in and drank. The cold water burned her throat. She lay on her back and stared at the clouds. They were white and gray, moving slowly across a pale blue sky. It was beautiful in a strange way. This planet was beautiful, even if it was killing her. "I am sorry, Mother," she whispered. "I cannot fight anymore." She closed her eyes and waited for death. The cold wrapped around her like a blanket. Her heartbeat slowed. Her breathing became shallow. In the distance, something moved through the forest. Footsteps crunched through the snow, coming closer, but did not hear them. She was already slipping away into darkness. The last thing she felt was something warm touching her face. A hand, perhaps, or maybe it was just her imagination, one final dream of comfort before the end. Then there was nothing but silence and the endless white snow. Had worked as a forest ranger for 5 years. He knew these mountains like he knew his own hands. Every trail, every stream, every hidden cave was familiar to him. He had walked these paths in every season, through snow and rain and burning summer heat. But lately, something was wrong in the forest. It started 3 weeks ago. Hikers reported seeing strange lights deep in the woods at night. Not campfires or flashlights, but something that glowed with a soft, unnatural color. The lights moved and flickered in ways that made no sense. Then animals started behaving strangely. Deer avoided entire sections of the forest. Birds flew in confused circles. A group of wild boars attacked a hiker for no reason, something that almost never happened. The other rangers thought it was nothing. Strange lights were probably just reflections from the moon. Animals acted strangely sometimes. There was no need to investigate. But was curious. He had always been curious about things that did not fit normal patterns. It was why he became a ranger in the first place. The forest was full of mysteries, and he wanted to understand them all. On that cold morning, he packed his bag with supplies and headed into the deep woods. Snow had fallen heavily the night before, covering everything in white. The air was sharp and clean, almost painful to breathe. He followed the reports toward the area where the strange lights had been seen. It was a remote part of the mountain, far from any trails. Few people ever went there. As he walked, noticed odd things. Some trees had strange marks on them, like burns but not from fire. The snow in certain places was melted in perfect circles, and there was a faint smell in the air, something chemical and alien, like nothing he had ever encountered before. His heart beat faster. Something was definitely out here, something unusual. He continued deeper into the forest until he reached a small stream. The water was mostly frozen, with just a thin channel flowing through the middle. Stopped to rest and eat some dried food from his pack. That was when he saw her. At first he thought it was a dead animal, a silver shape lying in the snow near the water. But as he moved closer, he realized it was not an animal at all. It was a person, or something shaped like a person. Ran forward and dropped to his knees beside the figure. His breath caught in his throat. The creature had silver skin, pale and cracked like old paint. Her hair was white as the snow around her. Her eyes were closed, but he could see they were different, larger than human eyes with strange, elegant shapes. She was not human. That was obvious, but she was dying. That was equally obvious. Her chest barely moved. Her lips were blue-gray. Frost covered her thin clothing, which looked like it belonged in a palace, not a winter forest. She had no boots, no coat, nothing to protect her from the cold. Did not hesitate. He removed his own heavy jacket and wrapped it around her. He lifted her from the snow, surprised by how light she was. She weighed almost nothing, like a bird made of metal. He carried her through the forest as fast as he could. His cabin was an hour away. He did not know if she would survive that long. He did not know if he could help her even if she did survive. But he had to try. The journey was the longest hour of his life. He talked to her as he walked, even though he knew she could not hear him. He told her about the forest and the mountains. He told her about his family and his life. He told her she was going to be okay, even though he was not sure that was true. When he finally reached his cabin, his arms were burning with exhaustion. He kicked open the door and carried her inside. The fire had died while he was gone, but embers still glowed in the stove. He added wood quickly and blew on the coals until flames appeared. He laid her on his bed and piled every blanket he had on top of her. He boiled water and made hot tea, though he did not know if she could drink it. He found a thermometer and tried to check her temperature, but the numbers made no sense. She was far colder than any human could survive. For hours he sat beside her and waited. He did not sleep. He did not eat. He just watched her breathe, counting each tiny movement of her chest. As the cabin warmed, color slowly returned to her skin. The cracks began to heal. Her breathing grew stronger. Whatever she was, her body was fighting to survive. Near midnight, her eyes opened. Had never seen eyes like hers. They were deep violet, glowing faintly in the firelight. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Those eyes looked at the ceiling, then moved around the room and finally found his face. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Human and alien, separated by billions of kilometers of evolution. Neither of them knew what to say. Then screamed. She threw off the blankets and jumped from the bed. Light exploded from her hands, bright and hot like a small sun. The blast hit in the chest and threw him across the room. He crashed into the wall and fell to the floor, gasping for air. Stood trembling, her hands raised, ready to attack again. Her eyes were wild with fear. She spoke in a language had never heard, words that sounded like music and static mixed together. Raised his hands slowly, showing they were empty. His chest hurt where the light had hit him, but nothing seemed to be broken. He looked at her calmly, without anger or fear. "It is okay," he said softly. "I am not going to hurt you." She did not understand his words. He did not understand hers, but something in his voice made her pause. He was not attacking. He was not running. He was just sitting there, hands open, eyes gentle. Had never seen anything like this. In the Empire, when you attacked someone, they attacked back. That was the rule. Strength against strength, power against power. But this human did not follow that rule. She lowered her hands slightly. The light faded from her palms. She was exhausted from using her powers, and she had nothing left to fight with anyway. Slowly stood up. He moved to the stove and poured a cup of hot tea. Then he walked toward her, step by careful step, and held out the cup. Looked at the cup, then at his face. He was smiling gently, like someone offering food to a scared animal. There was no threat in his expression, no hidden danger, just kindness. She took the cup. The warmth spread through her frozen fingers. She lifted it to her lips and drank. The liquid was strange but pleasant. It warmed her from the inside. Smiled wider and nodded. "Good," he said. "That is good." He pointed to himself. He said clearly, "My name is." Understood. He was telling her his name. She pointed to herself. She said, her voice was rough from disuse, "My name is." Nodded again. "Welcome to Earth." She did not understand most of his words, but she understood the feeling behind them. He was welcoming her. He was accepting her presence in his home. Felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Her eyes filled with tears. In the cold, cruel world of the Empire, she had almost forgotten what kindness looked like. She had almost forgotten that it existed at all. But here, on this primitive planet, in this simple wooden cabin, a stranger had saved her life and offered her warmth without asking for anything in return. She did not know what to say, so she simply bowed her head and whispered the only human word she had learned. "Thank you." Smiled. He did not know who she was or where she came from. He did not know what trouble he might be bringing into his life. But in that moment, none of that mattered. She was hurt, he had helped. That was all there was to it. The fire crackled in the stove. Outside, snow continued to fall, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, an empire had no idea that its discarded princess had found something it had spent centuries trying to destroy. She had found hope. The first days were difficult and could not understand each other's words. They communicated through gestures, drawings, and expressions. A smile meant happiness. A frown meant confusion. Pointing at objects helped them learn basic words. Would hold up a cup and say, "cup." Would repeat the word in her strange accent. Then she would say the word and would try to repeat it. They both laughed at each other's mistakes. Laughter, they discovered, was the same in every language. Was still weak, but she grew stronger each day. Gave her simple foods that her body could accept. Rice worked well. Vegetables were okay. Meat was still difficult, but she could eat small amounts of fish without getting sick. She did not understand why Earth biology was so different from hers, but she was grateful to find anything she could eat. During the second week, remembered the damaged device she had been using to record messages. She showed it too, explaining through gestures that it was broken. He examined it carefully, though he clearly did not understand its technology, but was clever with machines. He had fixed many things in his years as a ranger. He found tools and began working on the device, trying different approaches, watched with growing amazement. She had never seen someone repair anything by hand. In the Empire, broken things were simply thrown away and replaced. After 3 days of work, managed to restore power to the device. Was shocked. She activated it and discovered that some of the translation programs were still working. The device could slowly learn new languages if given enough examples. From that point, their communication improved rapidly. Would speak in and the device would translate to Korean. Would speak, and she would hear the meaning in her own language. The translations were rough and sometimes wrong, but they were enough. Finally, they could really talk to each other. Asked about her home, told him about the Empire, a civilization that ruled thousands of star systems. She described the massive ships that traveled faster than light, the planets covered with cities of crystal and metal, the technology that could build or destroy entire worlds. Listened with wide eyes. He had always believed humans were alone in the universe. Learning that countless alien species existed, that empires rose and fell among the stars, was almost too much to accept. Then told him about her father and her banishment. She explained how the Empire treated weaker species, how they conquered and enslaved without mercy. She told him about her mother's teachings, her speech against the Emperor, and her punishment. "They left me here to die," she said simply. "Your planet is considered a death world, too harsh for to survive." Was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "Why did you speak against your father? You knew he would punish you." Looked at the fire burning in the stove. Because it was the right thing to do. Those people he wanted to enslave had done nothing wrong. They were just living their lives on their own planet. They did not deserve to suffer. "But speaking up cost you everything," said. "Some things are worth more than everything," replied. Understood. He respected her choice, even though it had led to terrible consequences. In return, told about Earth and humanity. He showed her pictures on his phone, explaining about countries and cultures and history. He told her about wars and peace, about cruelty and kindness, about all the contradictions that made humans what they were. Was fascinated. The Empire had files on human civilization, but they only focused on weaknesses and resources. They had never bothered to understand what humans actually were. "Your species is very young," she observed one evening. "You have only had technology for a few hundred years, yet you have created so much beauty and meaning." Shrugged. "We try. We fail a lot, but we keep trying." In the Empire, failure is not tolerated. One mistake can end your life. "That sounds exhausting," said. "Everyone fails sometimes. That is how we learn." This idea was strange too. She had been raised to believe that weakness and failure were shameful. But here was a human who saw failure as a normal part of life, something to learn from rather than hide. She asked him one question that had been bothering her since she woke up in his cabin. "Why did you save me? You did not know what I was. I could have been dangerous. I could have killed you." Thought about the question carefully. "You were hurt," he said finally. "That is all I saw, someone who was hurt and needed help. What else would I do?" Stared at him. "In my culture, helping a stranger brings no benefit. It wastes resources. It creates risk. No one does it." "That is very sad," said simply. "You think we are wrong. I think you have forgotten something important." He paused, choosing his words. "Helping others is not about getting something back. It is about being the kind of person you want to be. When I saw you in the snow, I had a choice. I could walk away and stay safe, or I could help and take a risk. I chose to help because that is who I am. That is who I want to be." Felt tears forming in her eyes again. She had cried more in these weeks than in her entire life before. On Earth, emotions came easily to the surface. She did not know if it was something in the atmosphere or just the effect of being around. "My mother would have liked you," she said softly. "She believed the same things. She sounds like a wise woman. She was the person I ever knew." As the weeks passed, grew physically stronger. She could walk around the cabin without help. She could go outside for short periods, though the cold still affected her badly. She began helping with simple tasks, learning how humans lived their daily lives. She was amazed by how much work humans had to do just to survive. They had to grow food, repair buildings, maintain machines, and solve countless small problems every day. In the Empire, machines and servants did all of this. Citizens simply existed, consuming without creating. But there was something satisfying about work, discovered. When she helped fix a broken fence or prepare a meal, she felt a sense of accomplishment. She had made something with her own hands. She had contributed. "You are a good worker," told her one evening after they finished stacking firewood together. Laughed. "In the palace I never worked at all. Servants did everything." "Do you miss it, the palace and the luxury?" She thought about the question honestly. "I miss some things, the warmth, the food, the beautiful gardens my mother created, but I do not miss the coldness. I do not miss being surrounded by people who would betray me for power." She looked around the small cabin. It was simple and rough compared to imperial chambers, but it was warm, it was safe, it was honest. "This is better," she said. "I think I'm happier here than I ever was in the palace." Smiled. "Then I am glad you crashed on our planet." Smiled back. "I am glad too." Outside, winter still gripped the mountains. Snow covered everything in white silence. But inside the cabin, two beings from different worlds had built something unexpected and precious. They had built understanding. They had built trust. They had built the beginning of a friendship that would change both of their lives forever. And somewhere in the stars, the Empire had no idea what was growing in that tiny wooden cabin on the planet they called a death world. They had thrown away their princess, expecting her to vanish quietly into cold and darkness. They did not expect her to find light. Health was improving, but there were still problems. Her body worked differently from humans. Some symptoms appeared that could not explain or treat. Her silver skin sometimes turned dark in patches. Her temperature changed in strange ways. She had pain in places that did not match human bodies. Was worried. He was not a doctor. He knew first aid and basic medicine, but biology was completely foreign to him. He could be hurting her without knowing it. He thought about the problem for several days. Finally, he made a difficult decision. He called his younger sister. Was 24 years old and studying to be a doctor. She was in her third year of medical school, smart, and were close, despite living far apart. He trusted her more than anyone else in the world. The phone call was strange, tried to explain the situation without saying too much. I have a friend staying with me. She is very sick. I need your help. Bring her to a hospital, said immediately. I cannot do that. Please trust me. Can you come here? I will explain everything when you arrive. Was confused and concerned, but she agreed. She took leave from her studies and traveled to the remote mountain region where worked. When she arrived at the cabin and saw, she screamed and fell backward into the snow. Stood in the doorway, her silver skin glowing faintly in the afternoon light. Her violet eyes looked at with curiosity and concern. She did not understand why the human woman was so afraid. It took an hour for her to calm down enough to listen. Explained everything while sat quietly nearby. He told his sister about finding in the forest, about the Empire, about everything that had happened in the past month. Listened with her mouth open. Several times she looked at as if expecting her to disappear, like a dream that would end, but remained solid and real. This is insane, said when finished. You are telling me that aliens exist, that there is an empire in space, and that one of their princesses is living in your cabin. Yes, said, I know it sounds crazy, but it is true. Looked at again. The alien woman looked back calmly. There was no threat in her eyes, only patience and something that looked like hope. Can she speak Korean? Asked. Held up her translation device. I can understand you, she said through the machine. I am sorry for frightening you. I mean no harm. The voice from the device was artificial and rough, but the meaning was clear. Stared for a long moment. Then slowly, her fear began to change into something else. She was a scientist. She was trained to observe, analyze, and understand. Here was something completely new, something no human had ever encountered before. Her curiosity was stronger than her fear. Okay, said finally, show me what is wrong with her. For the next 3 days, examined carefully. She took blood samples, though she had no idea how to analyze alien blood. She measured vital signs and recorded everything in detailed notes. She asked thousands of questions about biology, trying to understand how her body worked. Some things were similar to humans, had a heart, lungs, and brain. She needed food, water, and sleep. Her cells divided and grew like human cells. But many things were different. Her blood was based on copper, not iron, which explained its silver color. Her body could convert light energy into nutrition, which was why she had light powers. Her immune system was extremely aggressive, which made her vulnerable to Earth's different bacteria. Worked out a treatment plan. She gave special vitamins to replace missing nutrients. She created a diet that her body could process. She treated the skin problems with modified human medicine that would not poison her alien system. Slowly began to truly recover. During this time, watched carefully. Here was another human who showed the same strange behavior as had been afraid, but she did not run away. She was curious, but she did not treat like a specimen. She worked hard to help someone who was completely different from herself. Why do you do this? Asked one evening. You do not know me. This work is difficult and unpaid. What do you gain? Thought about the question. I became a doctor because I want to help people. You are a person, even if you are not human. Helping you is the same as helping anyone else. In the Empire, doctors only help those who can pay. The poor and weak receive nothing. Frowned, that is cruel. Medicine should be for everyone. That is what my mother believed. She tried to create free hospitals for the lower classes. The nobles stopped her every time. Your mother sounds like she understood something important, said. Healthcare is not a privilege. It is a right. Smiled sadly. She would have loved this planet. As the weeks passed, other humans entered life. They did not know what she truly was. Told everyone that she was a foreign friend with a rare skin condition. It was a weak explanation, but people accepted it. An old man from the nearby village brought food after hearing had a sick guest. He left vegetables and rice at the ranger station without asking questions. He simply wanted to help. Children from the village sometimes visited the station to see the forest animals cared for. They saw watching from the window and waved at her. One little girl left a hand-drawn picture at the door. It showed a stick figure with silver skin and purple eyes, surrounded by hearts and flowers. Kept that picture. She looked at it often. A child who had never met her had created something beautiful just to make a stranger smile. In the Empire, such pointless kindness would be considered foolish. Here, it was simply normal. She told about how the Empire viewed humans. They say you are violent and irrational. They say you fight wars over tiny differences. They say you destroy your own planet and harm your own people. The Empire uses this as evidence that you are primitives who deserve no respect. Nodded slowly. Those things are true. Humans do terrible things to each other. Our history is full of war and cruelty. But that is not all you are, said. I have seen other things. I have seen you risk your life to save a stranger. I have seen your sister work without rest to help someone she feared. I have seen villagers share food with people they do not know. I have seen children give love freely to anyone who needs it. She paused, searching for words. Humans are not just one thing, you are everything at once. Good and bad, kind and cruel, weak and strong, you contain opposites. Laughed softly. We are a mess, I told you this before. Yes, but now I understand what it means. Looked at him with something like wonder in her eyes. In the Empire, we try to be pure, pure strength, pure ambition, pure control. We cut away anything that seems like weakness, but in doing so, we cut away our hearts. She touched her chest. Humans still have hearts. You are imperfect, but you are whole, and that makes you stronger than the Empire in ways they cannot understand. Was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I think that is the nicest thing anyone has ever said about humanity. Smiled. It was a real smile, full and warm. She had smiled rarely in the palace and never like this. It is simply the truth. I have seen it with my own eyes. That night recorded another message on her device, but this time it was not an apology to her dead mother. It was a promise. Mother, I have found something beautiful on this planet. I have found people who live as you taught me to live. They are not perfect, but they are trying. They have hearts that still know how to love. She looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Empire continued its cold existence. But here, in this small cabin, something warmer existed. I will stay with them, continued. I will learn from them, and someday, perhaps, I will help them reach the stars. They deserve to take their place in the galaxy. They deserve to show the Empire what it has forgotten. She turned off the device and smiled in the darkness. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The patrol ship entered Earth's orbit on a cold spring morning. It was a small vessel, designed for scouting and elimination missions. Inside, Commander stood at the control panel, watching the blue planet rotate slowly below. Was a loyal soldier of the Empire. He had served for 200 years, crushing rebellions and eliminating threats. He was cold, efficient, and completely without mercy. Emperor trusted him to handle sensitive matters that required no witnesses and no survivors. His mission was simple: confirm that Princess was dead, retrieve any evidence of her existence, eliminate any natives who had made contact with her, leave no trace. The ship's scanners swept across the planet's surface. Most of the readings were normal. Primitive technology, organic life forms, nothing interesting. But in one small area, deep in a mountain region of the eastern continent, the scanner detected something unusual. Faint biosignatures, weakened but definitely present. His eyes narrowed. The princess was still alive. This was unexpected. Death worlds were called death worlds for a reason. No should be able to survive on such a planet for more than a few weeks. But it had always been different. She had her mother's stubbornness. Prepare a ground team, ordered. We are going down. Far below in the ranger cabin woke suddenly from sleep. Her heart was pounding. Her skin tingled with an electric sensation she had not felt in months. Something was wrong. She rose from her bed and walked to the window. The sun was just rising over the mountains. Everything looked peaceful, but she could feel it in her blood, in her bones, in every cell of her body. The Empire was here. She called out, her voice was sharp with fear. "Wake up!" Appeared from his room, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What is wrong?" "They found me," grabbed his arm. "Are here, soldiers, they are coming for me." His face went pale. "How do you know?" "I can feel them, it is a ability. We can sense our own kind when they are close." She pulled him toward the door. "You have to run, you have to leave this place now. If they find you with me, they will kill you." "I am not leaving you," said firmly. "You do not understand. These are Imperial soldiers. They are not like me. They are trained killers with weapons that can destroy buildings. You cannot fight them." "Then we run together." Shook her head. "I cannot run fast enough. I am still weak. They will catch us both. But if I stay here and face them alone, you might escape." "No," grabbed both her hands and looked into her violet eyes. "I told you when we met. I am not the kind of person who runs away from trouble, and I am definitely not the kind of person who abandons his friends." Tears filled his eyes. "Please, I do not want you to die because of me." "Then help me fight." His voice was steady and calm. "Tell me everything about these soldiers. Tell me their weaknesses. We will figure this out together." They had no time. Quickly explained what she knew about soldiers. Their armor was strong but not invincible. Their weapons were powerful but needed time to recharge. They were trained to fight other, not primitives. They might underestimate humans. Nodded as he listened. Then he grabbed his phone and made several calls. He contacted other rangers in the area. He called hunters and villagers he trusted. He told them there were dangerous poachers in the mountains, armed and violent. He asked for help. Within an hour, a dozen men and women gathered at the ranger station. They carried hunting rifles, knives, and tools. They were farmers, shopkeepers, retired soldiers, and ordinary people who had never faced anything like what was coming. Looked at them with gratitude and guilt. He could not tell them the full truth. He could not explain that they were about to fight aliens from space. He could only hope they would survive. "There are armed intruders in the forest," he told them. "They are dangerous and well-equipped. We need to stop them before they hurt anyone." The villagers nodded grimly. They trusted. If he said there was danger, they believed him. They spread out into the forest, setting traps and preparing positions. "Watch them go. They do not know what they are facing," she said quietly. "Some of them might die." "They chose to help," replied. "That is what humans do." Commander and his team of 4 soldiers landed their small craft in a clearing a few kilometers from the cabin. They moved through the forest in perfect formation, their armor blending with the shadows. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. They expected no resistance. Why would they? This was a death world filled with primitive creatures. The mission would be simple: kill the princess, kill any witnesses, return home. The first trap caught them by surprise. A soldier stepped on hidden wires and triggered a rain of heavy logs from the trees. The logs bounced off his armor without damage, but the noise was loud and confusing. Before he could recover, something hit him from behind. It was a metal tool, swung with all the strength of a retired carpenter. The blow dented the soldier's helmet and knocked him forward. 3 villagers appeared from the bushes, swinging axes and hammers. The soldier tried to raise his weapon, but another trap triggered. A net made of steel cables fell from above, tangling his arms. The villagers attacked together, hitting weak points that had told them about joints, neck seals, weapon hands. The soldier went down. Across the forest, similar scenes played out. They were stronger and better armed, but they were fighting on unfamiliar ground against enemies who knew every tree and stone. The humans used traps, ambushes, and pure stubborn determination. One villager was burned badly by an energy blast. Another broke his leg falling into a ditch, but they kept fighting. They dragged their wounded away and continued attacking. They refused to retreat. Commander watched his soldiers fall one by one. He could not believe what he was seeing. Primitives were defeating trained soldiers. It was impossible. It was humiliating. He activated his armor's full combat mode and charged toward the cabin alone. If his soldiers could not handle simple humans, he would complete the mission himself. He burst through the trees and found standing in front of the cabin door. The human held nothing but a wooden stick. Behind him, through the window, could see Silver Face watching. "Step aside, insect," commanded. His voice echoed from his helmet's speakers. "My business is with the traitor, not with you." "Did not move. She is not going anywhere." Laughed. It was a cold, mechanical sound. "You would die for an alien who is not even of your species. How pathetic, how utterly primitive." "She is my friend," said simply, "and you are not welcome here." Raised his weapon, "Then die knowing your sacrifice meant nothing." Before he could fire, light exploded from the cabin. Stepped outside, her hands blazing with power she had been gathering for hours. She looked weak and thin, but her eyes burned with determination. "Commander," she said, "I remember you. You always followed my father's orders without question. You always enjoyed causing pain." Pointed his weapon at her. "And I will enjoy ending you, traitor." "Perhaps," said, "but not today." She released all her remaining power in a single massive blast. The light hits armor and overloaded every system. Sparks flew. Circuits burned. The armor locked up and froze in place. Collapsed to the ground, unable to move. His weapon fell from his paralyzed fingers. Fell too, exhausted beyond measure. Caught her before she hit the ground. Around them, the battle ended. The remaining soldiers, seeing their commander defeated, retreated to their landing craft. They had underestimated this planet and its people. They would not make that mistake again. As their ship rose into the sky, one of the soldiers transmitted a warning to the Empire. Earth was not defenseless. Humans were not harmless. The death world had teeth. Held as the sun rose fully over the mountains. She was unconscious but breathing. Around them, wounded villagers helped each other up, checking injuries and counting their blessings. They had won. Against all odds, against an enemy they did not even understand, they had won. Looked at the sky where the alien ship had disappeared. "They will come back," he said quietly, "more of them next time." But for now, that did not matter. For now, they were alive. For now, they had proven that humanity was not as weak as the Empire believed. And that was a start. The weeks following the battle were quiet and tense. Returned to help treat the wounded, asking no questions about the strange burns on their skin or the melted weapons found in the forest. The villagers who had fought that night never spoke openly about what they had seen. They simply shared knowing looks when they passed each other in town. A silent brotherhood formed in impossible circumstances. The official story called it a gas leak in the mountains. There was an explosion. Some people were hurt. Dangerous chemicals were involved. Nobody believed this explanation, but nobody challenged it either. Some things were too strange to discuss openly. Recovered slowly. The blast she had used against Commander had drained almost all her remaining power. For days she could barely move, drifting in and out of consciousness while monitored her vital signs and sat by her bed. When she finally woke fully, the first thing she saw was sunlight streaming through the cabin window. Spring had arrived. The snow was melting. Green buds were appearing on the trees. "You have been asleep for 12 days, told her. He looked tired but relieved. "We were worried." Tried to sit up and failed. Her body felt hollow like an empty shell. "Commander." "Alive but damaged. His soldiers took him when they retreated. He will probably report back to your father." Closed her eyes. "Then the Emperor knows I am alive. He knows humans helped me. He will not let this insult pass." We expected that, helped her drink some water. We have been preparing. Over the following weeks, as regained her strength, she learned what had happened while she slept. Had been busy, very busy. He had contacted old friends in the military, people he trusted with his life. He had carefully shared information about the alien encounter, showing them evidence that could not be. These trusted contacts had quietly passed the information up the chain, finding others who were open-minded enough to listen. A small group now knew the truth about the Empire. They were not many, but they were powerful. Generals, scientists, intelligence officers who understood that everything had changed. They want to meet you, explained. When you are strong enough, they want to understand what we are facing and how we can prepare. Nodded slowly. She had expected this. I will tell them everything I know. The Empire's weaknesses, their technology, their strategies. Humans will need every advantage if the Empire decides to attack. Will they attack? Thought about her father. She remembered his cold eyes, his absolute pride, his hatred of any challenge to his power. She had embarrassed him by surviving. She had embarrassed him more by finding allies among creatures he considered worthless. He will want to, she said. But attacking Earth openly would be expensive. We are far from territory. The Empire has enemies closer to home who would take advantage of any large military deployment. My father might decide the cost is too high. And if he decides it is worth it. Met's eyes, then we fight together. The months passed. Spring turned to summer, summer to autumn, grew stronger in body and spirit. She began working with human scientists, sharing technology in careful pieces. She did not give them weapons. She did not trust humans to use weapons wisely yet. Instead, she gave them knowledge, better materials, cleaner energy, medical advances that could save millions of lives. In return, she learned about humanity. She read their history books, their philosophy, their literature. She watched their movies and listened to their music. She traveled to cities and villages, always disguised to hide her alien appearance, observing how ordinary people lived their lives. She found beauty everywhere, in a grandmother teaching her granddaughter to cook, in strangers helping someone who had fallen on the street, in protesters demanding justice even when they knew they might be arrested, in artists creating works that would live forever, in lovers holding hands as they walked through parks. Humans were messy and imperfect, just as she had learned. They made terrible mistakes. They hurt each other for stupid reasons. They destroyed precious things they could never replace. But they also loved with abandon. They hoped against all evidence. They dreamed of better worlds and worked to build them. They refused to accept limits that others placed on them. In the Empire, hope was considered a weakness. In humanity, it was a superpower. Also stayed in contact with the villagers who had fought beside her. The old carpenter who had struck the first blow against a soldier became her friend. He brought her vegetables from his garden and taught her how to make traditional food. The children who had left drawings at the ranger station visited often, fascinated by the foreign lady who spoke strangely and asked endless questions about their games and dreams. She attended a village festival in autumn, wearing human clothes and makeup that hid her silver skin. She watched families eating together, couples dancing, elders telling stories by firelight. It was so different from the formal ceremonies of the imperial court, where every gesture was calculated and every smile hid a knife. "Are you happy?" asked her that night as they walked home under the stars. Considered the question carefully. In the palace, she had never thought about happiness. It was not a concept discussed. Success, power, status, these were the things that mattered. But happiness? "Yes," she said finally. "I think I am. For the first time in my life, I am truly happy." Smiled. "Good, you deserve it." Far away in the cold halls of the Empire, Emperor received Commander's final report. He listened in silence as described the battle, the human resistance, the princess's survival. When the report ended, The emperor sat motionless on his throne for a long time. The nobles around him waited nervously, afraid to speak. Finally, the emperor spoke. "So my daughter lives, and she has found allies among the insects. We can send a larger force," offered. His armor had been repaired, but his pride had not. "We can burn that planet to ash and waste resources on a worthless world." The emperor shook his head slowly. "No, let her keep her primitive friends. Let her play at being a rebel. She is no threat to me." But as he spoke, something uncomfortable stirred in his chest. He had thrown away, expecting her to vanish quietly. Instead, she had survived against impossible odds and had inspired others to fight for her. That was not supposed to happen. The weak were supposed to die. The strong were supposed to rule. That was the order of things. Yet a handful of primitives with crude weapons had defeated trained soldiers. A dying princess with no resources had built something that made an imperial commander retreat. For the first time in his long reign, Emperor felt something he had not experienced since childhood. It took him a moment to recognize the emotion. It was doubt. On Earth stood on a mountain ridge beside, watching the sunrise. The sky blazed with colors: orange, pink, gold, purple. Birds sang in the forest below. A cool breeze carried the scent of flowers. In culture, said, the sunrise represents ending. The old day dies, the darkness wins. Looked at the brilliant colors spreading across the sky. On Earth, we see it differently. The sunrise means the darkness has ended. A new day is beginning. Everything is possible again. Smiled. She had learned so much on this planet. She had learned that strength could be gentle. She had learned that kindness was not weakness. She had learned that hope was the most powerful force in the universe. "I like your interpretation better," she said. "Stay and see more sunrises with us," replied. "We have plenty." Took his hand. It felt warm and solid and real. A human hand holding an alien hand. Two species, separated by billions of kilometers of space and millions of years of evolution, connected by something as simple as kindness. "I will stay," she said. "I will help you reach the stars. And when you do, you will show the galaxy what the Empire has forgotten." "What is that?" Looked at the sunrise and felt tears of joy running down her silver cheeks. "That the heart is stronger than any weapon. That love is more powerful than fear. That hope cannot be defeated, no matter how many empires try to crush it." She turned to with a smile bright as the rising sun. "Humanity is the proof that kindness wins, and I am honored to stand with you." The sun rose higher, painting the world in light. Below them, in villages and cities across the planet, humans woke to a new day, not knowing that their world had changed forever. Not knowing that somewhere in the stars, ancient forces watched and wondered. Not knowing that they had already begun to write a new story, a story of hope and courage, and the unbreakable strength of the human heart. A story that the galaxy would never forget.